I want to be the best, so in order to be the best, I have to play against the best.
Hey, welcome back to the 191st episode of the Athletes Podcast. Today, we feature Pheonix Copley on the show, starting goaltender for the LA Kings, and someone who I'm fortunate to be able to call a friend now. Just a super stand-up guy, graciously gave us time during August, his off-season. We were able to chat up top of his rooftop. Unfortunately, the airplanes did not agree with our timeline, so we did have to patch up some of the audio, but the content is still there. It's amazing. Pheonix shares insights, knowledge, wisdom, his patience, expertise in the goaltending world, and it was an honor to be able to chat with him on the show today. If you're new here, we do have an athlete agreement. Something that we ask is that instead of charging you for this stuff, we simply require you to hit that subscribe button, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're consuming the Athletes Podcast content. We really appreciate it. And the way we're going to keep doing this on a weekly basis is if you hit that subscribe button over here. One of the things I wanted to expand more on during this episode was the fact that Pheonix did tear a muscle completely off of his groin, and he had to go through a 2-year recovery process. We didn't dive specifically deeper into that, what it was like, the pains, etc. But one of the things that he did emphasize was his knowledge that expanded on nutrition, diet, and how it can help in that recovery process. One of the things we bring up is Athletes Apothecary, the tea that he and Jess have started, the Dream Big, the Nourish, and the Revival tea. We have all three. They're incredible. Pheonix, our producer, and I are drinking it every single night during the day when we wake up. We can't get enough of it, honestly. And I want to make sure that you folks know you can purchase this online. We really stand behind what they've built here. It's nutrition as nature intended. That's their tagline. Couldn't agree more. I wanted to make sure that you folks know that this is something that you can be doing to help yourself, whether it's performance, hydration, or simply feeling better throughout the day. Pheonix and the rest of the Los Angeles Kings organization are striving towards a championship this year. You can tell during the episode that's his goal. That's what he's looking to achieve. He's willing to work to be the best in the NHL, to be able to perform at the top. Without further ado, let's get to episode 191 featuring Pheonix Copley. Here we go. The netminder from the North Pole, Pheonix Copley. Thanks so much for coming on the Athletes Podcast, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to dive into what life is like for a North Pole native to be down here in Southern California now, enjoying LA Kings lifestyle. Bit of a windy road to get here. Why don't we start off by letting you share a little bit about yourself, your journey, starting at Corpus Christi Ice Rays in the NHL, getting to the Tri-City Storm, and then the journey along after that.
Yeah, so the first time I left Alaska to play for a team, it was in Southern California. I played for the Simi Valley Titans, which it's like an hour from here. But yeah, so that was the first time, the first shock, I guess, to the system. Came down to live in Southern California, and it was a good experience for me. The following year is when I was in Corpus Christi, which again, that's another nice and warm place. So yeah, I've liked getting out of Alaska to the warm places. And then from there, yeah, I went to Tri-City Storm, Des Moines Buccaneers in the USHL, and then it was college. So that's kind of a quick version, but yeah, it's been kind of a wild ride, and hockey and sports in general can take you to some cool places. And yeah, I'm happy to be here and just enjoying the ride.
Recently signing a $1.5 million deal with the Kings, 1 year, kind of a prove-it deal after putting up some ridiculous numbers last season, 24-6-3, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Or heading into the playoffs. Just featured on In Goal Radio with Woody's little selection there. Thought I'd try and shine light on who you are as a human being, how you've been able to get to this position today, overcoming what would be to most probably an improbable situation coming from the North Pole. I was chatting with Drew Harding earlier, just like trying to figure out how the heck you start playing hockey up there and then end up making it to the NHL, because most people probably don't have those even in their mindset, the aspirations. Like, what's it like growing up there from a competitive standpoint, playing with other kids? Is it even a thought? Obviously it was for you. What was that process like? Because I think most people are very interested from that to start, and then we'll dive into Michigan Tech.
Yeah, from an early age, I don't know how it got in my mind, but playing in the NHL is what I wanted to do. I don't know exactly what put it in my mind, but having my brother, we playing together growing up, kind of pushed me. But in Alaska, hockey's big up there, but there's just not a lot of kids playing. So there's 2 or 3 teams we would play against. Both the other 2 teams were in Anchorage, so we would have to go down there and play, which was from where I'm from, about a 6-hour drive. So it it wasn't probably as convenient as like Toronto or Minnesota, where there's all these teams and it's new opponents. I was playing against the same guys growing up down in Anchorage for however many years. So it's a little bit different in that regard, I guess. We would go play tournaments. We'd come down Southern California, Chicago. We'd go to BC, play tournaments there. So we would do stuff like that. But other than that, it was all like playing against the same guys as we're growing up. So I think that's probably a big difference from being in a hockey hotbed. But yeah, I know everyone I played with, that was always our goal, to play juniors, play college, play pro, get to the NHL, and so it was just kind of, I think, natural as a kid. That's the dream, the sport you're playing in, to make it to the top.
What is it with tendies and being able to overcome some craziness? I mean, Carey Price getting flown to practices, I don't know if it was 6 hours in length to get there. You're crossing ice roads, I'm assuming. Like, what's that journey? 6 hours, like, is that just for Anchorage? How far away is your practice rink? I'm assuming there's only one rink.
Yeah, so there's 3 rinks. North Pole is 20 minutes from Fairbanks, so Fairbanks had 2 rinks, North Pole had 1. So we had a decent amount of like ice availability, and then when the weather isn't too cold, we skate outside and have fun there. So it wasn't no shortage of availability, and there was, it's kind of a hockey community up there in Fairbanks. That's kind of the only entertainment in the winter. It's dark and cold, and so there's a junior team up there, there's a college team, and when I was up there growing up, that was the fun times. We'd go into those games where it was always really fun, and watching those guys, and it kind of gave us something to aspire to reach those levels and beyond.
Not only the starting goaltender for the LA Kings, but also the co-founder of Athletes Apothecary. Tell me about your tea journey, man. What the two of you got going on with the tea game, because we bought a couple packs. I've been crushing it. We don't have it down here in Los Angeles, but I love the stuff, and I think that's something that a lot of athletes don't necessarily understand, the impact of hydration. And I know that's something that you found back in 2017, when you lost 19 pounds in a game.
Yeah, so it was kind of some circumstances led to the creation of that. It was 2016, that season. I was dealing with some cramping and dehydration issues, and it kind of, throughout the season, I was aware that it was happening, but I didn't really look into how to solve it or how to overcome it. I just kind of went business as usual, and drinking a lot of water, drinking a lot of Gatorade, sweating a lot, and then dealing with these cramps in intermissions and after games. And then it was in the playoffs that year. In the first round, we had a double overtime game. It was a hot day. I was in Hershey, and after a double overtime game, I weighed myself, and I had lost 18 pounds, and it was just I was feeling drained and fatigued, and so drank a bunch more water, a bunch of Gatorade, and back at it. And then in the second round of that playoffs, I ended up tearing a muscle off the bone, and I think it was just a culmination of kind of running my body down without having any awareness of nutrition, diet, what I'm drinking. I was just drinking a bunch of water and a bunch of Gatorade, and so then being injured like that, it kind of gave me time where I couldn't train, I couldn't really do much. So I didn't like just sitting there, so I started to research into how I can prevent that from happening. And so the first thing that popped out was diet. Got to clean up my diet. So I started doing that, and then I was looking into how to hydrate better, and I had learned that drinking a bunch of water can actually dehydrate you. Just chugging a bunch of water can actually pull minerals and electrolytes out of your system. And then drinking a lot of sugar, having a lot of sugary beverages, can kind of do the same. It can dehydrate you. And those are like the 2 things I was drinking the most, was Gatorade and water. So I I kind of like started looking into that. How can I fix that? And smoothies seemed to help me a lot. And then I started drinking tea, and tea seemed to help me a lot. Because with tea, the hot water actually, it breaks down the plant material a little bit. So you're getting those, the nutrients and the electrolytes and minerals from the plant material. And so you're not just drinking straight water. It's now got minerals and electrolytes in it. And so I started to drink tea and these smoothies, and everything kind of started to feel better. The cramps started to go away. I started to drink teas and intermissions of games and kind of smoothies throughout the day, and it all seemed to kind of fall in line better, and I started to feel better. And so in Hershey, there was a farmer's market we were going to, and they had a little section that had loose leaf tea ingredients that you could buy like in bulk. And so we started to kind of mess around with that, Jess and I, and we ended up, making our own blends, just experimenting, getting a bunch of peppermint, rose, chamomile, lavender, and just kind of seeing what it was like and what we could come up with. And then after a while, we were kind of like, this is kind of a cool thing, and I think this could help a lot of people. And so a lot of other athletes who are kind of, because the big thing is, it's like Gatorade and all these drinks, they're good, but there is so much sugar and so much chemicals and artificial ingredients that it can actually do some harm if that's all you're drinking. So we found that tea was a good alternative that's all natural and that can provide that kind of hydration, but in a natural way without all the chemicals. And so we decided to start making the company, and we wanted to make it available to more people. And so that was kind of the start of Athletes Apothecary, was to make those ideas available to more people, because we hadn't seen anything where there's tea focused for athletes. And so that was our idea, and that's kind of how it got its start.
It's fitting on the Athletes podcast to have Athletes Apothecary, a little promo in there. I just imagine, in the D room, you sitting there with a nice cup of tea in between intermissions. Players automatically already question whether goalies are a little cuckoo, as
that confirms it.
Did you always want to be a goalie growing up?
I was a forward at the start. My older brother, when we were at home, he would be needing someone to shoot on. So that's a pretty classic goalie story. The older brother shooting on the goalie at home. So that's how I got my start. And I remember I always really liked goalie gear, like watching the goalies and watching like the big pads and the helmets, the cool paint jobs. That kind of attracted me to the position. And then when he needed someone to shoot on, I was kind of just fell into place. And then playing at home, I decided to give it a try on the ice once, and the organization I was playing with gave the kids gear who wanted to play for the seasons. So got to try it, and I just really enjoyed it. I loved it, and so that was all she wrote.
I'm a tendie also. I was attracted to the gear initially, and then obviously Hutch showcasing, talking to goalies, I was like, oh, okay, now I really got to dive in. Clearly didn't pan out for me making it to the show, but now I get to live vicariously through guys like yourself. Who was the goalie that you looked up to, inspired, maybe you tried to emulate growing up?
Marty Brodeur. I wouldn't say emulate, but Marty Brodeur was the guy that is a hard one to emulate. But he was the guy I loved watching growing up. Just, he was so steady. I remember watching him try to score and then score growing up, and for some reason that just really attracted me to him, and I liked how he played, but I never was that style of goalie.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like his generation, I think. But yeah, he was always the guy I liked watching.
And Richard Brodeur is the one that caught your attention on the Athletes podcast. You can follow along.
Yeah.
What'd you think of that one?
It was good. It's cool to hear old goalies talk, because so much has changed, and in their time they were playing with such different gear and such a different game, right? It's cool to hear those kind of things, where the history of the game, I guess, is what interests me in that regard. But yeah, that was good.
He was funny during that conversation. I don't know if you remember too much of it, but he was throwing some jabs at the current goaltenders about the RVH and sitting far back in there. Now he's like, oh, you got to be out, cutting down the eggs.
Yeah. My stepdad was a hockey player back in the day, and he was a forward, but he would always, he still does. He gives me crap when I give up a goal upstairs because I should be standing up. Like, why are you going down? You got to stay on your feet. So it's kind of funny. I think that's just like the old school mentality a little bit, but there is also something to it.
Man, it is tough, but they also had goalie coaches tying ropes around their neck, around the crossbar to keep them up, right?
Yeah, and I've heard of like adding weights to the stick because if you get scored on the ice, then they're tying or taping weights to the stick so you don't lift your stick. But
is there anything crazy in your training that people would look at and say, "Oh man, what's going on here?" Or like, are you referencing pro reads and on In Goal Mag? What's the Pheonix Copley recipe for success?
I mean, I'm always trying to get better. I'm always, seeing what I can learn from other guys and other trainers and what guys are doing. It's awesome that there's such a wealth of information out there right now with the pro read stuff. You can literally go watch, and other guys will tell you, what they're doing, what they're thinking, how they're training, and that's really cool because it helps goalies everywhere. It helps everyone get better. Everyone has an equal chance to hear that information and then use it however they see fit. So I like doing that as well. But as I get older, I think I've gotten smarter at understanding what will work for me and what won't. Everyone has their own style too. So if a way you want to play doesn't fit your style, then if you're going to force it, it's not going to work for you. So you have to kind of be aware of that. And I think with the more experience, that kind of comes where you can understand what fits in your game and what doesn't.
Annoying playing against a guy like Zegras who's trying to like pull pucks around and do the Michigan on you. Do you ever get
nervous about that? That's just kind of like there seems to be more and more of that.
Yeah.
In hockey now, where guys are trying that kind of crazy stuff that guys probably wouldn't even think about trying 5-10 years ago. But now it's like
light you up.
Yeah, but now it's like you're seeing every game someone's trying something like that. So I think it's just how it's going until someone puts a stop to it. But it's also some of it's kind of impressive that guys can do that kind of stuff, the lacrosse stuff. It just is what it is. You gotta be able to defend it.
Matty Hutch is doing it in warm-up. Hutch's son, I don't know if you've seen the clips of him. I'll throw that in there, a little plug for him. He's out in Montreal right now doing a CCM shoot, probably where you should be too. But a lot of people say that McDavid looks like me, so I'm curious, is that consistent?
I can see that.
Yeah.
When I first saw you, I was like, what's he? Oh.
You're like, why is he interviewing me? Yeah. Is it intimidating going up against a guy like that? Do you worry about that at all? You seeing the speed? What's it like going and competing against guys like him and McKinnon?
The way I look at that is I want to be the best, so in order to be the best, I have to play against the best. So whenever I get to play against these guys, it fires me up because it kind of shows me where I'm at and what I need to work on, because if I can do well against the best, then that's where I want to be. So playing against the best players in NHL fires me up, and that's my attitude towards that.
Any stand out other than those two that I named that you love going up against?
Makar, he's one of those guys who stands out for sure. There's one or two guys on every team that seems to have that factor where they can make a difference. So basically, no matter who you're playing, you're going to go against someone who has that ability. So it's a challenge on a nightly basis. But for me, I want to be the best, and so playing against the best, that's what I have to do.
Who was your team growing up? Were you a Devils fan because of Brodeur?
Yeah. I liked the teams based on the goalies. So the guy I liked watching as far as goaltending outside of Brodeur was Marc-Andre Fleury. I liked watching him come up, and I never really took to the Penguins. It was kind of, Marty was my first favorite goalie, so the Devils were like my team coming up. But there was a lot of guys I liked watching goalie wise, but Marty took the cake for my favorite.
Yeah, the flower. I loved those all yellow RBK.
Yeah.
What up, team? Quick break here to let you know that we got the discount code for you here for Athletes Apothecary. You've heard Pheonix talk about it during the episode. We want you to get it 15% off by using the code AP15 at checkout. Again, that's Athletes Apothecary. Use the code AP15 for 15% off your own tea, whether you're looking to dream big, nourish, whatever you're looking to achieve. Athletes Apothecary helps you hydrate better, recover faster. These functional teas and superfood blends are incredible. This provides you a mindful approach to sports nutrition.
They're on a mission to provide athletes with an all-natural, chemical-free option for hydration and recovery. Mix in a tea instead of that third coffee during the day. I promise you'll feel better, you'll perform better, and at the end of the day, who doesn't want to be better? Now, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, I heard like you talking about patience and acquiring that over the years, and not just playing, but also mentally understanding that it takes time, processes, rising through the ranks. I know you also, do you use Sensorina?
I have in the past. I think like in the summer, I used it in season, and I felt like it wasn't as productive as it would be in the summer.
Right. The my day job, we create firefighter and police training in VR, so I'm always curious to see how people are using it. That Sensorina, for instance, I know the Kings are using it on the ice as well for the players, so I'm always curious what guys are doing in the off season to get better, because you know, when you're in the North Pole, there might not be throw opportunities to get out there and get the high quality shots, right?
Yeah, it's cool that there's tools like that available. There's the program we used also had different things, like there was like different visual things with balls bouncing around, and you have to keep your eye on one, and there's different programs like that that really kind of, you do them for 10 minutes and then you take it off and your brain's like, holy smokes, you can tell you were working areas of your brain that you're not used to. So it's cool to have those kind of tools.
Is there any differences you see within organizations between Washington, St. Louis, LA, anything that more hands-on, hands-off with the goalies? Sometimes I've heard that goalies are the focus of attention. Sometimes coaches want to be hands-off and not let them do their thing. Is that the case for you here in SoCal?
I mean, definitely it's different per team and per coach.
I heard you on that In Goal radio podcast talk about how you haven't necessarily had negative experiences with coaches. Obviously, people have every end of the spectrum, pros, cons. Are there coaches that stuck out to you that have done a really good job that you want to shout out during this, or that you would highlight specific things that they did that you think that others should do to try and ensure that goaltenders are seeing success? Because it wasn't like you came on the scene as a young 20-year-old and picked up and became a starter. Like, you had to grind, and you've had to put in years of work, right? And it's a testament to your hard work.
Yeah. So I've been fortunate to have some really good coaches. In college, I had Steve Shields, and he was really my first coach. Like as I was coming up, I had some coaches in Alaska who really helped me as well, but Steve Shields was the first one that I had at Tech, and he kind of helped, straighten some things out for me. And then when I turned pro, Scott Murray was with the Hershey Bears. He's now with the Capitals, and he really helped me. I feel like he kind of had the best understanding of my game and really helped guide me and show me what I needed to work on, where I needed to be in order to have success in the NHL. And so he's probably had the biggest impact on me. And then in Hershey, Alex Westland, I worked with him, and he was kind of the same. Like, he had a good understanding of what I needed and what I needed to work on to get to the next level. And so I worked with him for a good amount of time in Hershey. And then I'd say those two guys really helped me. They taught me so much, and we were working so much that then when I came here, Billy Ranford, he's a little more hands-off. Like, he coaches us and guides us, but it's a little bit more hands-off than how those guys were doing it. So it kind of gave me the reins to just take everything that I'd worked with those two guys and just put it into action. And I think that was like a really good scenario for me. And Billy, the way he coaches just fit me really well last year, because I was just able to go use the stuff that I had learned. And, if I had a question or if something wasn't working, he was there to help work through that with me. But yeah, I would say Alex Westland and Scott Murray for sure have had the biggest impact on coaching me and developing my game.
So you're sitting here at 6'4", 200 pounds. I'm looking over, and you got some big mitts. Were you playing any other sports growing up? You look like you're just raw athlete, could have been playing anything.
I definitely gave other sports a try, but nothing really stuck. I played baseball very briefly. I played soccer for 1 year in high school, and that wasn't great at soccer, so it was fun, but it was a tough sport for me to grasp. I didn't get the positions well, so I was running everywhere. Yeah, I mean, I was always playing different things with my brothers. Swimming in high school, I did a little bit of that, but I nothing really stuck for me. It was more just stuff to pass the time when hockey season was out.
Just fishing in the off season, right?
Did a lot of fishing, yeah.
4 days without even knowing. Well,
Yeah.
I know that was a story we were talking before we started recording. You probably had to tell it about 20 plus times on podcasts now, so you feel free to share a condensed version. But what is that experience like, having your brother letting you know that you're getting traded?
Yeah, so the story on that, it was after my first year of pro hockey, and we do this fishing trip every year, my brothers and I, and it's basically in the middle of nowhere in Alaska, and so we drive, I don't know, 4 hours or so out to the middle of nowhere. We drop off in a raft on a river, and it's a 4-day float where we're out in the woods. We pull over on the side of the river, camp, fish all day, pull over, camp, and it's just kind of a fun little getaway where we're out, out in the backcountry of Alaska. And so we've done that since we were young. And this one year we're out in the middle of nowhere, so there's no service.
Yeah.
We drive over a mountain range to get there, and then we lose service. And so the trade actually happened the morning we left, and obviously no service. We're gone for 4 days, and we get back and we're driving back home, and we go over that mountain range, and then our phones start blowing up, and mine was going crazy, and I was, we're pretty groggy and tired. It's 4 long days on the river, and my brother looks at me, he's like, dude, you just got traded. And I was like, what? No way. So I look at my phone, and sure enough, yeah, it happened 4 days before. And so, yeah, they couldn't get a hold of me. Somehow it was when I got traded from Washington to St. Louis, and somehow Mitch Korn, who was the goalie coach with Washington, had got a hold of my mom on either the second or third day. He had found my home phone number somewhere, and so he called her and let her know, and she was like, oh, well, he's not going to know for a few more days. So they ended up, after a couple days, they knew that I was out of range. But it was just kind of funny, weird timing that it happened the morning I left, and it was definitely a shock to find out that way. But I guess that's just part of the game.
What did you catch on the trip?
We were going for rainbow trout and grayling, and usually that trip, I'm sure we caught a lot. There's always a lot on that trip because no one else is. It's the river is. It's pristine, and there's not people fishing from the banks. You'll see sometimes someone else floating by, but it's pretty much, you're out there on your own, away from civilization, and so there's lots of fish, and we usually catch a lot of grayling, a lot of rainbow trout.
Yeah, not a lot of people driving 16, 18 hours to go fish.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at, it was going to be 18 hours for us to drive from White Rock to the North Pole. And we considered it, because we got the AP truck.
2 Pheonixes in one.
I know.
One place. That's doesn't happen often.
First time we've had 2 Pheonixes. Tell me about tech. What was that like, going to school?
Tech was good. I was only there 2 years. We had some good teams. As far as hockey goes, having Steve Shields there was awesome. The other goalie there was Jamie Phillips, and he was drafted by Winnipeg, so it pushed me. Definitely having having a drafted goalie there to battle for the ice time, and so that was good. And then it's a small school, so the expectations were low, and I think we kind of leaned into that, and I played with some good players there.
Bit of an adjustment heading to university, college, like down in the States. Obviously now you transitioned to Idaho, spending time there. You'd been in SoCal, but I imagine for a North Pole kid, there's got to be an adjustment period. There's got to be some changes that.
Honestly, though, Houghton, it's like a small town. It's cold. It's lots of snow, so it was the closest place to home that I probably have played.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was. It reminded me of the most of Alaska of anywhere I've played, and so it was good. It was an easy adjustment in that regard. It was just the schoolwork, and then playing hockey on top of the college schedule with travel and stuff. That was probably the biggest adjustment.
Is there any places that you look back now and you're like, you love being able to go play in that barn? You love being able to go to the Staples, crypto.com or
Hershey was a cool place to play. It's a small town, but they really get behind the hockey team there. I enjoyed playing there. Obviously, playing in Southern California, it's tough to beat that. but there's a lot. Like the Canadian teams always have crazy atmospheres. It's always fun to play. Minnesota has a really good atmosphere. Vegas has a really good atmosphere. So there's a lot of places that have, they create that environment that's just fun to play in. But Hershey stands out as far as a place I've played that I enjoyed.
And then you're rocking True gear. What gear were you wearing growing up? What was the association gear that they hooked you up with?
I think it was Dr. gear. But when I was 14, I was in RBK, so the Lefebvre design gear, and I've been in Lefebvre design gear ever since.
Okay.
It was just the name has changed. There was RBK, Reebok, CCM, and now it's True. It just seems to fit me the best and feel the best. I've tried other brands, then they just don't. It just feels weird. I think it's been so long now that I've been wearing it that it probably won't ever change.
And you're rocking the CCM stick. Any particular reason for that?
No, that's what I have. I've tried other sticks as well, but for me, the number one thing is to be comfortable, and that was the first composite stick I switched into, and I didn't want to go composite stick, but they told me they're not going to make any more of the wood ones or whatever they were, the foam core, and so I reluctantly switched to composite, and it took me a good couple weeks because they're so much lighter in the feel when you're playing the puck, and when the puck hits it comes off a little bit different, and so it took me a couple weeks to really feel comfortable, but once I did, I'm really happy about it because they're so much lighter, and it's actually much easier to play the puck with a composite stick. So I switched reluctantly, but yeah, and the CCM was what I've been using, I think, probably since college, and it feels good to me, and I've tried other ones that just don't. The weight is a little weird, or the flex is a little weird, and rather than force it and try and stick with something I'm not comfortable with, I just stuck with CCM.
The Kings now sign a big guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois. You guys got a nice young roster coming in. What's expectations like here in Los Angeles playing hockey? I'm sure there's mixed emotions. They got the Dodgers, they got the Rams. There's a ton of other attention on sports teams here. What's it like being a professional athlete in Los Angeles? Are you getting stopped as you walk down the
No, there's so much going on here as far as like you said, all the sports teams. There's Hollywood right there. Like it's not like that. But as far as our expectations, I think everyone here wants to win a championship, and that's what everyone has their mind on, and certainly myself. I think, that's why I play. I want to win a championship, and I don't think anyone in the locker room would say anything different. That's what we got our sights set on, and clearly the management, signing a big guy like Dubois and the young guys that are in this organization, it shows that they want to win as well. So that's the expectation, and that's what we're all pushing for.
Who are some of the jokesters in the D room? Who are the guys that are firing clappers above your head, ringing it off the glass that you might have to give a little hack to the back of the knees during practice?
Well, Drew Doughty, he's not necessarily ripping him at the head, but he is certainly the jokester in the room.
Yeah. What's any particular moments stand out over your past year that you'd like to share with the audience?
I don't know. I don't know anything in particular, but he's just always got a grin on his face, always up to something, always, doing something to make the boys laugh. And he's a good guy to have around because no matter what's going on, he's got a smile on his face, and he's making guys happy. So he's just one of those jokester types.
He's been doing that since his Ontario Hockey League days, and he's got a couple less teeth now. But I think that smile is probably what puts a smile on other people's face, right? And it's important to have guys like that in the D room. I know you were reading a book on breath and the importance of that. I think it was Ricky. Oh, I had the name.
It was Gracie.
Ricky Gracie. Yeah. There you go. Have you read James Nestor's book on breath? There you go. Sorry, big nasal breather then.
I try to be. Yeah. It's I think it's a underutilized tool for everybody, but especially athletes, and I kind of had a little bit of a breath coach for a little bit who was teaching me. She's a free diver, and she was taking me through exercises and stuff on how to recover a little bit faster and how to essentially get a cardio workout without even standing up. Just kind of pushing yourself with your breathing, and breath holds and stuff. And I noticed a big difference, not only with endurance and cardio, but it kind of mentally, it kind of calms you down a little bit, and it's a good mental reset. So there's all sorts of little tools, and those books have been a big help too. I didn't, the breath book by Hickson Gracie was the first one, was like my introduction to breath work, and I was like, wow, this is pretty crazy. He kind of like based his whole fighting on breathing, and it was pretty incredible how far he took it. And so yeah, I think it's just been a tool that I've learned about, and I think it's probably something that you'll never master. No one, you can't master it, but you can get better at it and use it, and it helps a lot for sure.
What other tools are you incorporating? Are you using a cold plunge? Are you saunaing? Are you rocking Normatec? Are you hyper ice? Like, are you going full influencer route and going everything in a while? Like, are you nasal breathing? Are you putting on mouth tape?
I've gone through the mouth tape at night, and I feel like it helps, but then I don't know, I kind of like do that in waves. Like if I'm not sleeping great, put mouth tape on, and I find I get a good night's sleep. So that's like something that I have used in the past, and kind of, if I feel like I need it, I'll use it. Cold plunges I like to do in the summer. I find they're more of like a mental thing for me than really a lot of help recovery wise. I feel like during the season when I do them, I don't feel as good the next day. I feel like kind of stiff and sore. So for me, I just like to do them in the summer, where it kind of like is just an extra edge, I guess, mentally. It keeps me kind of sharp mentally, or makes me do something I'm uncomfortable with, which I think helps. So for me, cold plunges are just more of a mental thing rather than recovery thing.
There was just a study that came out, and I'll link it in the show notes, but it proved that cold plunges are not good for muscle growth. So bodybuilders, athletes out there trying to get big and huge, maybe not the goalies of the world, it definitely does not help with that aspect, but I like it for the mental aspect, right? Like seeking out discomfort. Actually, Mikey Vera, who was on the last episode, Mr. Do It Moving is his Instagram handle. He's a coach for NBA guys.
Nice.
Victoria Azarenka's coach for a while, strength and conditioning coach. And he does it every morning. His routine's crazy. He wakes up at 4 a.m., goes through that like cold plunge, and that's mainly for the mental aspect. I don't know how much it helps for maybe I think it's recovery. If you're trying to run a triathlon or stuff, maybe it's going to help there. But man, I love the cold plunge as a little toss in there, change up the pace, especially when you're here and it's at freaking 90, 100 degrees.
Yeah, I found also doing them in the evening before bed in the summer when it's hot out, it's nice. It helps you. For me, it helped me get a good night's sleep. Like I like going to bed a little cold, so I'm not too hot, wake up hot in the middle of the night. So yeah, I think it's good. It's probably different for everybody. Like some people might swear by the recovery benefits of it, but for me, that part's not there. It's more of the mind and the sleep.
And I also looked at my notes here and realized I hadn't brought up the fact that you journal, and that helped around some anxiety, other aspects of your game, both mental, physical. You want to touch on how that impacted you positively?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of a tool. I think if you're holding stuff in, it can have outward effects that you don't even know about. So I find that journaling is just a way to get stuff off my chest. If I'm frustrated or if I'm holding something in, I can write about it, and then I'm no longer holding on to it. So if I have a bad practice or a bad game, or even if things are going great, then I'm not. It's kind of keeps you level-headed, I think, and you're not holding on to stuff that happened in the past. Or if you're anxious about something that may happen, I find writing about it kind of takes that away. So journaling has just been kind of a tool to kind of keep me from holding on to things, and it's been something that's I've evolved over time, and it's been super useful.
I love it. So I'm curious, as an undrafted athlete, what that process was like for you. Normally we like to bring up with that draft story how you had experienced, but I'm curious from your perspective, and I think it's again a testament to your hard work. Was it disappointing? Was it something that was even on the radar? Did you think it could happen? Is it like, looking back, are you glad you weren't, so that you continued to work hard?
Yeah, it wasn't really on the radar. To me, it just was what it was. Like, obviously you want to get drafted, like that'd be a good first step to achieving your goals. But when it didn't happen, I don't remember at all being ever like bummed out or disappointed. It was just like, that's not my path.
Yeah.
I'll just keep working and try and make it happen another way. So I was fortunate at Michigan Tech. I think, like I've said, Steve Schultz helped me, and then because we got to go and play in some big tournaments, like we did one in Christmas, the GLI,
Yeah.
and that helps kind of. We played big schools in that, and I think that kind of helps get your name out there, and you get kind of more exposure in those situations. So that definitely helped. And then the Capitals came to me early on in my second year, and at the end of the season they had an offer for me, and so I really had to think, because I wanted to get my degree. I saw the value in getting a degree, but at the same time, my dreams were to become an NHL player, and that was a step to that. So it was a tough decision, but when that opportunity came, I had to go for it.
Any significance to the number 29?
29 was the first number I had as a goalie. So most every other number I've been given to me in pro, and then when I got here, I was able to choose one, and so chose 29. It's not super significant, but it's just kind of a full circle, I guess, from when I started playing goalie to now. I'm got the same number.
Kevin Woodley said you were one of the guys who treats their bodies the best in the NHL that he saw. So obviously you're doing something right. You're drinking the tea. You talked about your diet earlier. What are you incorporating specifically? Are you supplementing? Are you eating specific foods?
I like to experiment. I mean, right now I like to do mostly meat and fruits and veggies, but I'm constantly seeing what works best and kind of tweaking things. And so yeah, I think like I've gone through phases where I just try different things. The biggest thing for me is just eating clean, trying to eat meats that are sourced properly, that aren't, the animals are raised sustainably and fed good stuff, so that I'm not eating junk through the animals, and eating plants that are grown organically and not sprayed with a bunch of chemicals and stuff. So for me, it's just trying to eat as clean as possible, and then from there I'll just experiment with what I'm eating and what makes me feel good.
So is that where the 1.5 mil goes? Just strictly food?
Just a chef.
Yeah.
No, Jess actually is a great chef. She does all of the cooking. But we definitely, food is valuable for us, and I think it's treating your body right for anybody, but especially a pro athlete, I think will pay dividends in the long run.
100%. I think one of the things I'm always curious about is, like, the LA Kings just came in. I was doing some research. I think they're ranked 9th on the valuation list at $1.39 billion as an organization. One of the things that I'm curious to learn more about is how athletes feel about the fact that NFL teams are worth $7-8 billion and players are only getting paid millions of dollars, and they're the product at the end of the day that is put on the ice, put on the field, and generating that income and generating all that external wealth for these billionaires who are then able to capitalize on this. And I'm always curious, why couldn't they share some of that equity and maybe provide a bit more? Do some of the guys in the D room share a similar?
If you're trying to get me canceled.
No, because I was talking with a cousin and her husband, actually, specifically around this topic. And I'm not gonna have you say anything I don't want to, because I'm capable of saying all this, because there is something to be said around athletes and being paid a fair amount for what they deserve. And I think you look at running backs in the NFL right now, for example, and like Google and YouTube creating music that's now being generated and produced, and now artists aren't getting paid what they deserve. So there's a huge disparity around artists, professional athletes. At the end of the day, everyone's creators, and they're building wealth, generational wealth, for the individuals who are now at the top benefiting from it. So I'm always curious to hear, like, is that sentiment there from athletes? Is that sentiment there from the players in the D room, thinking that, hey, maybe, we should get treated well? Or I guess maybe a fair question that won't get you canceled is, what's it like in the D room at the crypto.com? Are you guys getting fed well? Are they taking care of you? Are they making sure that you're, in tip-top shape, set up for success?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the standard now is, I think it's gotten so high with probably all major sports leagues where, they're feeding us really well, lunch, breakfast, all that. But I will comment on what you were saying before. I think that's kind of just business in general. I think, the people who are running the show, they're always the ones who get to set these prices, and so they're the ones who get, I guess, to reap those kind of benefits. At the end of the day, we are, we're doing what we love, but we are also employees. We are, if you break it down far enough, kind of just pieces of meat that, we have to do our job, and if we don't, then we're out. So that's kind of, it's like any business. You have a job to do. If you don't do it, then they're going to find someone who will. So, fortunately, I get to do a job I love. So I'm happy to play hockey for a living. But yeah, I think that's just kind of how business is. If you're not running the show, then, the guy who is in charge, and they get to set the prices.
Yeah, I say this wearing an LA Kings shirt. They can't be that mad. I'm doing a little promo for them. Come on, let's be honest. And hey, I think it's only fair to make sure that you guys are getting compensated appropriately. Like,
yeah.
Our goal is to educate, entertain, and inspire that next generation of athletes. I want another kid from the North Pole to be able to talk to in 20 years that says they listened to this podcast and said, "Oh, I know I can do that." But hey, I want them making $5, $10, or $15 million a year, because that's the piece of the pie that they deserve, because that's what they're contributing, right?
Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying.
And I just want to make sure that, hey, if I'm going to sell my company for $8 billion like Dan Schneider just did with the Washington Commanders, that the players who just put their bodies on the line for the past decade that he owned it, despite him not doing anything, if anything, it was more negative around what he was doing in that organization. Why is he going from 800 million to 8 billion, right?
Yeah, that's a complex issue because, there's a lot of layers to that, breaking it down, and the hurdles that, the Players Association and the league have to figure out. But, you can kick in some doors and maybe make some things happen.
Hey, I loved the answer, though. You did a very good job about, perusing around the outside and still providing me a perfect answer. I appreciate it, Pheonix. I always like to ask, is there anything that I haven't brought up today that people don't know about Pheonix Copley that you think they should know, or pieces of advice that you would share? We always wrap up with our guests by asking their biggest piece of advice for the next generation of athletes. As someone who hasn't had a traditional path to the NHL, I really appreciate you sharing your insights, knowledge with our listeners, our community. I hope we'll be able to feature you again on once you win that championship, once you put up this incredible numbers again next year. But is there anything you want to leave the audience with today?
Yeah, thank you. And, I think the biggest piece of advice that I would have is to just be yourself. Do what you love and do it for as long as you can. And, that's all you can do. So that's all I got.
Okay, I got to have another question here. It's not the end. You're calm, cool, and collected, and very composed. Was this from your parents instilled? Is this your brothers? What's got you to this composed nature? And I think Jess is laughing over there. Is that not the case?
Do you have an answer? My dad's kind of calm. It could be a little bit from my dad. I don't know. I think,
is there specific attributes or things from your parents that you think have impacted you over the years or that have stuck through? I mean, you mentioned a couple of coaches, but anything in particular that you look back? I mean, I look at my persistence, my maybe stubbornness, ability to just work hard and put my head down for my dad, but I also think I got a lot of empathy from my mom, and I got the ability to look at different perspectives from her, and I am grateful for what they provided to me growing up, not really realizing it as a kid, but as I look back, I'm that was pretty cool what she taught me, maybe indirectly or directly, and I do appreciate what my dad provided for me from a physical standpoint or a work ethic standpoint. Anything that you look back on that your parents...
My mom is definitely tenacious, and I think her having that influence on me has helped a lot. She's definitely stubborn as well, so that has rubbed off on me. My dad's more creative type, which I think, there's a role for that in sports as well, and development, and that's kind of been with me. My stepdad, he is more of a hard worker, more of he's stubborn as well. So I'd say there's some of that there. But I think his big thing is hard work and doing things right. And so that kind of impact on me, I think, has helped. So having like that mesh, I guess, of qualities instilled in me, I think has helped. But I think what stands out the most to me would be my mom's stubbornness and tenacity.
I love it. I had to ask. Hey, I appreciate your time, man. I can't wait to watch you this year. Crush it again. And hopefully they're paying you more than $1.5 million next year. All right, Kings? You don't have to comment.
It's a good one to end it on. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, we got to advocate. Get your work out, you know? Yo, I appreciate your time, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to the 191st episode of the Athletes Podcast. As you can tell, Pheonix is a fantastic listen and someone who I can't wait to be able to continue watching his journey throughout the next couple of years here in the NHL with the Los Angeles Kings organization. Hopefully we don't get him canceled there with a couple of questions we asked, but I'm sure we are going to see him acquire a larger contract from the Kings moving forward if he keeps performing the way he did last year. Can't thank him enough for coming on the show, sharing his time during the offseason. Can't thank you folks enough for tuning in to this episode of the Athletes Podcast. If you haven't, don't forget about that athlete agreement. Just hit that subscribe button. Super easy. Means the world to us. And we can't wait to see you next week for another new episode featuring Xana Munoz. See you later. Bye.